the NHL's version of March Madness, and the fallout from the Auston Matthews injury continues. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Short Shifts for Monday, March 16th, 2026. Vic Morren, Neil Smith. Saturday, and Friday for that matter, you were back at UBS Arena for a couple of games that the Islanders played against the Kings and the Calgary Flames, respectively. But I want to talk more about that Saturday date because nobody knows the spread and the cuisine better at UBS than you do. And of course, Saturday, 3/14, was Pie Day. Did you have pie?
No pie for me. Just pie in the sky.
No pie for you Saturday. No superstition on Friday. I got to find out some better themes. Maybe something for St. Patrick's Day on Tuesday. You'll offer something up to the table here.
My sister's birthday is Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day. Her name is Patricia Smith. So there's my contribution to St. Patty's Day.
All right. We've got that out of the way. So let's get right into the standings in both conferences before we hit this Auston Matthews piece, which I believe a lot of our listeners are going to find interesting. So in the Atlantic, unchanged from Friday when we did our last short shifts to today, Buffalo, Tampa Bay, Montreal stay 1-2-3. Buffalo now with a 4-point lead over the Lightning after their shootout win on Saturday against Toronto, while Tampa Bay lost versus Carolina. Montreal lost in regulation to San Jose and Anaheim. Bad weekend for the Canadiens. And let's talk about that Sunday game for a second, because you talk about insult being added on top of injury. Kirby Dach hurt about 3 minutes into the game, took a hit up high from Jeffrey Viel, and then with 2:30 left in regulation, Viel, who's known more for his rough stuff than his finesse, a gorgeous spin-around behind-the-back pass for Cutter Gauthier for the game-winning goal for the Ducks.
Yeah, this Cutter Gauthier is something else. This is the guy that didn't want to play in Philadelphia, and so there was a trade arranged to go to Anaheim, and he has been nothing short of miraculous in Anaheim this season. And as for Viel, takes a run at Dach and then turns around, and it looks like he's got sweet hands when he sets up Cutter Gauthier for the game-winning goal with only 2.5 minutes to go.
Metropolitan Division, also unchanged from entering action on Friday till Monday. Carolina, Pittsburgh, 81 points. Islanders, 81 points in those 2-3 spots. Carolina, as we just said, beat Tampa Bay on Saturday. Pittsburgh, big win in Utah, overcoming a 2-0 second period deficit. The Islanders lost to the Kings on Friday, but beat the Flames on Saturday. Now, let's go to the wild card, because we just mentioned Pittsburgh and the Islanders with 81. Boston and Detroit flip. Wild cards 1 and 2. Both have 80 points, but it is now Boston in wild card 1 and Detroit in wild card 2. The Bruins had a shootout win in Washington on Saturday. We're going to talk a little bit more about that game in just a moment, while Detroit lost in overtime in Dallas. And right behind them, the Columbus Blue Jackets with 79 points. They win in a shootout in Philadelphia on Saturday, and they also have a game in hand on Detroit. The Blue Jackets 15-2-4 under Rick Bowness. And right behind them with 77 points, the Ottawa Senators. They also have a game in hand on the Red Wings. They won both games over the weekend over Anaheim and San Jose. They are on a 7-1-2 roll.
That's a mouthful, bringing everybody up to date on that. And there are some teams that are on one type of roll, and there are teams that are on the opposite type of roll. But Ottawa plays so darn hard every game, as does Columbus, as does Detroit, as does Boston. So you're really going to have a dogfight down to the end with these guys. It's really entertaining to watch.
I want to go back to the shootout that Boston won in Washington. That was an ABC game on Saturday. 18 shooters. And finally, Fraser Minton was able to score the goal that decided it for the Bruins, who had not been playing well on the road. This was a huge 2 points for them because Washington had the lead in this game in the third period, really needed this game in regulation. And not only do they not get the regulation win, they don't even get the second point in the shootout. And so they have 74 points. They're tied with Philadelphia for that 5 position in the wild card. But the Caps only 14 games left. And something else that stood out for me in this game, when you saw Alex Ovechkin's shootout attempt, where it was a weak deke to the forehand, got himself in too close to Jeremy Swayman. I know a lot of people don't want to say this, but I've watched him really carefully over the last few games. And you remember, over the course of his entire career, you always knew when he was on the ice. And he's just not as visible. And I hate to say it because hopefully maybe he goes on another rip in these last 14 games. He looks 40.
I think that's partly him, and I think that's partly where the team is psychologically right now. I think this John Carlson trade, even though I sort of predicted that they might do that, if you remember back, because he was on an expiring contract and he might want to go to a contender or at least a playoff team. To me, when you're in the locker room and you trade one of the stalwarts of the team at the deadline, you're waving the white flag and you're saying, okay, I don't think we're good enough to make it, so I'm going to get what I can get. And that seeps into the players, that there's not a belief that they're good enough to make it. And that could be what's going on there in Washington with the team right now, is that as hard as they're trying, in the back of their mind, you know, they think that management thinks they're not good enough to make it this year, and they sort of waved the white flag and traded one of the most popular players in the room.
They're not out of this thing yet, but they're going to have to go on a heater similar to what we have seen from the Ottawa Senators in the last few weeks.
Well, similar to what we saw from Washington Capitals themselves a few years ago when they went on that enormous playoff run, somehow snuck into the playoffs, went out in the first round, but still, remember they were a big minus goal differential and they somehow got in that year. And that was the year that Pittsburgh also did a belly flop and flopped out of the playoffs at the same time as Washington went on their run. So they're capable of doing it. But I agree with you, Ovechkin, we're all going to slow down as we go through life. But I do think he looks like he's slowed down a little bit this year. Not when he does interviews, not spiritually or excitement for the game. I don't think that's slowed down. But I just don't think he's the horse that he was a number of years ago. Even last year when he had all that enthusiasm to break the record. This year he's just adding to the record. So we'll see. I mean, never count him out, as we know, but I agree with you. He doesn't look the same.
You know, there are exceptions to that slowing down rule. Just see the host of this show.
Me? I know. Well, I agree. I'm not slowing down. Oh, boy.
Western Conference, Central Division, unchanged. Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, still 1-2-3. But the Avalanche lost in Winnipeg on Saturday. Their lead, just 3 points over Dallas, though the Avs have played one fewer game. The Stars, 14-0-1 in their last 15 after an overtime goal by Thomas Harley against Detroit on Saturday. Meanwhile, Minnesota Wild, who more and more look like they are locking themselves into third place in that Central Division. How do you lose to the Rangers in Toronto on consecutive nights, and you are victimized on Saturday by Yaroslav Hamelish of the Rangers and Bo Grew of the Maple Leafs? I mean, granted, the goaltending by Igor Shesterkin and Anthony Stolarz was exceptional in both games. But, boy, you're getting beaten by some pretty no-name players and not at a good time of the year.
And you're not showing that togetherness that they showed earlier, and after the trade deadline and after everything Billy Guerin did to solidify a contender with the Minnesota Wild, they just don't seem to be able to put teams away, and in fact they fall behind. So they're going to have to figure this one out. John Hines and his group has been fantastic all year, but now they're slipping, and it looks like they're staying in third spot. There's nobody that's going to catch them, by the way. The team behind them is 14 points behind. That's the Utah Mammoth, and they are not going to catch either Dallas or Colorado. So they're locked into third, and for having that kind of year, they get the prize of playing in the first round against either Dallas or Colorado.
I think that's the interesting thing here, though, for Dallas, that they're playing the Avalanche again on Wednesday. So there's added incentive for the Stars here, because not only to get out of a potential matchup with Minnesota, but to put Colorado into a matchup with the Wild, while they would, in all likelihood, be getting wild card 2.
Right, and they play each other twice more. As you mentioned, they play on Wednesday night in Colorado, and then they play in Dallas on April 4th. Those obviously will be 4-point games in both of them, and we'll probably tell. Colorado slowed down a little bit here as of late, and at the same time, Dallas has been on that unbelievable winning streak, so we'll see how long it lasts.
Only loss in there was that shootout loss against the Avalanche, and that was a game that the Stars actually led with 15 seconds left in regulation. One final note about the Wild, Neil. Does this actually help them in a way, knowing that they've only got 14 games left, so they're 6 points behind Dallas, but Dallas has 2 games in hand? Does this help the Wild to kind of, okay, we kind of know where we're going to finish now, and that they can work on other details of their game to start getting this thing back on the rails?
I don't think so, Vic. I think that they've known for a long time they're probably going to end up where they are. The thing that they're going to have to work on right now is why they're getting off to these slow starts, and they're going to have to change some pieces of their game plan around to make sure that they don't get down by 2 goals early in the games. And back-to-back home losses on back-to-back nights is just not good for your fan base. I mean, nobody likes to come out to St. Paul, to the arena, and see you lose 2 games in a row like that. And so they're going to have to work on that. The good part is for them, they now go back-to-back with Chicago. So that should give them 2 wins if they get back up to their level.
Well, they did lose to the Rangers and Maple Leafs, so no game is easy in the NHL. So Pacific Division, unchanged. Anaheim 77, Vegas 76, Edmonton 75. Anaheim lost in Ottawa on Saturday, but won in Montreal, as we'd said earlier, on Sunday. That was the debut for John Carlson in a Ducks uniform. The Golden Knights with a shutout win against Chicago on Saturday. They have now won 2 straight. The Oilers blew a third-period lead in St. Louis on Friday. They were up 2-0 late in that game and then wound up losing in OT. But they did beat Nashville on Sunday. But the potential fallout from that game, Neil, Leon Draisaitl took a hit from Ozzy Weisblatt in the first period, left, came back, skated a shift, and then was gone for the rest of the game. The Oilers said afterwards that they are hopeful that he will be back soon to resume their pursuit of a playoff spot. That didn't sound overly optimistic to me, but we don't want to pass judgment until we get more of a report from the Oilers, who no doubt will list this injury as undisclosed, even though it was clearly his right leg that got pinned against the boards.
My news source says there was no post-game update on the status after leaving yesterday's game with an injury. But what you heard does not sound good. Doesn't sound like he's going to be right back in the lineup in their very next game, which is against San Jose tomorrow night.
We're going to talk about San Jose as part of the wild card section. Utah, with 74 points, remains in wild card 1. Seattle leapfrogged those Sharks that you just mentioned 71 points to 70. Seattle now in wild card 2. The Sharks in wild card 3. The Kraken win consecutive games on Saturday and Sunday in Vancouver on Saturday, and then come home and squash the Panthers on Sunday. San Jose won in Montreal and lost in Ottawa. But let's go back to those Kraken for 1 second. What about Bobby McMahon? Plays his first 2 games for the Kraken. He had visa issues and was not able to suit up for the team until Saturday. Scores 2 goals, 1 assist in the win at Vancouver. Comes back home, gets a goal and an assist against the Panthers.
And that'll make Leaf fans really happy because everybody wondered why you didn't re-sign him, because he's a big, strong horse that you've had. And it seems like this guy's just coming into his own at this point in his career. Yeah. I mean, I thought he was really good for Toronto up to this point. Now, obviously, in this very early debut for the Kraken, he's been excellent. So we'll keep an eye on Bobby McMahon.
He was one of the guys that we thought, with Mitch Marner going over to the Vegas Golden Knights, that he would be a key cog if the Maple Leafs were to get back into the playoffs and make some noise. And, of course, that's not going to happen, and now McMahon's gone.
Well, we don't want to go too far down the road on Toronto right now, but I think what happened was Brad Treliving and Craig Berube tried to replace Marner with harder, tougher, stronger guys, bigger guys, and play more of the Berube game. And they really missed the Marner type of game. What Marner brought, the penalty killing, the dexterity of his passing ability, and the speed. And that was not replaced by these big, hulking guys that they brought back in. So there's no doubt that they miss Mitch Marner. I'd love to hear candidly what Mitch Marner really thinks after leaving Toronto now and how he feels. Everything about the Leafs has gone to hell in a handbasket, and he's sitting pretty in Sin City.
And, of course, the warm body that came back in return for Marner, Nick Waugh, is now in Colorado. But we're going to stay on the Leafs. Everybody remembers on Thursday night that Auston Matthews, the team captain, was hit by Radko Gudas, kneeing penalty, and we were awaiting suspension and also the results of what the injury actually was for Matthews. And it turned out it is a grade 3 MCL tear along with a thigh contusion. He will be reevaluated in 2 weeks to see if surgery is required. For Gudas, a suspension of 5 games. He is eligible to return on March 24th at Vancouver. And, oh, by the way, the Maple Leafs come visiting to Anaheim on March the 30th. So now that the dust is settled here, there's been a lot of people speaking out on the nature of this suspension, which was only 5 games. On Friday night, John Tortorella threw his arms up in the air while on ESPN and saying, from incident to incident, you don't know if it's 3 games, if it's 5 games, if it's 10 games. Connor McDavid came out and said that the league needs to review how suspensions are doled out. So I think a lot of people are calling for action here, but you don't hear any plans, do we?
No, you never hear any plans. I mean, the plans you might be hearing is if you're at the GM meeting, where I hear that the things exploded inside the GM meeting over this Matthews hit. You know, the thing is, Vic, and it's a long discussion, but even in the court of law, you never know what the judge is going to decide. I mean, we watch enough shows to know that one thing that you think is definitely he ain't getting off, and he does. And another one where you think he didn't do it, and the judge deems that he did. So it's not an exact science, even in normal society, of how punishment is doled out. But there's got to be something that makes you understand what and why someone was penalized in the way that they are for suspensions. My thought has always been that there has to be a judgment put into it, not just that there was an injury, but how long have you injured him for? And I gave you the example yesterday that if you are in a car and you hit another car and the person is fine, no health issues, no nothing, but their car is crumpled up. Well, you get off with just your insurance company paying for the other guy's car. But if that guy comes out of it with a neck brace and a sprained ankle or more, you're going to be in a lot more trouble than you are if you just have a fender bender.
As we said, no plans, just a lot of talk. But on this show, we come ready. And I'm going to throw a potential plan out to you. Let's poke some holes in this thing. It's not going to be perfect, but perhaps at least foundationally, it's something that maybe the NHL could start to build off of. And what I'm going to suggest is a 2-schedule plan for doling out suspension. So the first schedule assigns a degree of severity on the incident, taking account the incident in and of itself plus injury. So there would be 3 levels of severity. When you look at what Gudas had done with the kneeing major, game misconduct, and Auston Matthews being lost for the entire season, this would be level 3, the highest level. So you take the incident by itself, you get all of your information, which includes the injury, and then you assign the level of severity. From there, you look at how many times a player has been previously suspended. And from that, you assign a number to that. It's not going to be perfect, but in the Gudas case, where he had been suspended 4 times previously, I think a level 3 of severity and 4 times previously suspended, maybe that's 12 games if you use some sort of multiplier system. What are your thoughts?
Maybe it's 12 or maybe it's more, because you're losing Auston Matthews for the rest of the season, which right now the Leafs have 14 games to go. What did they have when he got hurt? 16 to go. Maybe you can't play. If he can't play for the rest of the regular season, either can you. Maybe that's it. Now, the problem that you get with that, having been in the NHL a long time, I know this, is that, if not with the Auston Matthews case, but let's say with a lesser player, well, they could say, oh, he's going to be out the rest of the season just to keep your guy out the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. Or they could say, oh, he's going to be out for 2 weeks when he comes back after a week. So you'd also have to throw into that whatever you say the player is going to be out, he has to stay out. So in other words, Auston Matthews, even if he could come back now, would not be allowed to come back for the rest of the season, because the suspension was doled out based upon, in part, how long Matthews would miss play with Toronto.
There's also 2 other pieces to this. One is that the CBA has already been ratified, so they would obviously have to reopen this to go back in and make any sort of change for supplementary discipline. And the other is the position from the NHLPA, because theoretically, they are representing both parties here, the offending player and the player that got injured.
Right. And so it's a tough nut for the NHLPA to represent both. There's also the general manager of the player, would be, in this case with Gudas, let's say it would be Pat Verbeek as well, and representatives from the Leafs to stand up for Auston Matthews. But at the end of the day, it's those guys that make these judgments on player safety, which is really George Peros. He runs that department. Yeah. And George Peros reports to Colin Campbell, I believe. And so these are not scientific decisions, I will say politely. These are the decisions made based upon the experience that these gentlemen have in the NHL.
Before we let this drop, I think the one thing that frustrates people, and Torts had articulated it on Friday, is even though I do believe precedent does take certain suspensions into account, it comes off optically like every incident that is reviewed for suspension is treated like an a la carte case. And that's kind of the idea of putting some sort of schedule in place that takes severity and combines it with the history of the player and at least enables you to land on a concrete number. Like we said, it's not perfect, but it feels like the suggestion that I put out there has more structure than what we're seeing now.
It may seem that way, but I would argue that the league would argue that they already have that structure, that they already look at how many suspensions the players have. They already look at whether or not there was an injury. And if you look at the player safety videos, that's all mentioned in those videos when they deem out the suspension.
But 5 games for what we saw, the nature of that event and the injury, that flies in the face of everything that the NHL is saying.
Well, it really does, because if there's anybody that's seen as a boogeyman in the NHL, it's Radko Gudas. Really, I mean, he's a guy that everybody knows. He injures people from time to time. I mean, it was just in the Olympics. Crosby got hurt getting tangled up with him. It wasn't purposeful, but still, it was the same guy. So now he takes Matthews out with a blatant knee, and you thinking to yourself, well, this is a severe suspension. You put out a player for the rest of the season. I mean, basically saying the playoffs are over for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, yeah, it seems light. And I think when there's not an explanation or people don't understand why the number 5, why not the number 12, why not the number 3, why not the number 15, somebody needs to give an explanation to that end.
Usually we wait till the end of the show for call to action and to write to us and subscribe and all that stuff. But we're going to do it here because we would like to hear from you on our suggestion of having schedules for severity of injuries coupled with the history of supplemental discipline given out to a player. So write to us, Vic at NHLWraparound.com or Neil at NHLWraparound.com. Let us know what your thoughts, or if you are listening on any of the platforms, leave a comment there. That's a good time to segue into some of the injury news. And regarding the Florida Panthers, Sam Bennett and Sam Reinhart both did not play in the Panthers' loss in Seattle on Sunday. Reinhart isn't even on the 4-game trip that the Panthers are on. Bennett is day-to-day. The good news, Seth Jones may return this week. He has been out since getting injured in the Winter Classic back on January 2nd. But Neil, for Florida, this just appears to be more of the conveyor belt of injuries that they have experienced since Alex Barkov went down in training camp.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just been a horrific year for them. And probably, you know, the major reason, if you ask Paul Maurice, is because they've played so much hockey in the last 3 seasons leading up to this season. It's an 82-game schedule, and then they went through 4 rounds for 3 years in a row. And that has to take a toll on you. Perhaps the Panthers will be able to take it in stride, sit this one out, get everybody healthy, and come back and go at it again next year.
And another player that we may not see for the rest of the season, Brad Marchand.
Yeah, he's going to have to get himself healthy. We were talking about this earlier before we did the recording, and you play the game the way Marchand's played, and this is why he's won 2 Stanley Cups. But that takes a toll on your body after a while, I got to think. And, you know, he'll need some real rest and recuperation this time, I would think, to get in a full season next year. Because as life goes on, you know, you get hurt easier and easier. You've got more brittle bones and things bruise a lot easier. So we'll have to see with Brad Marchand, but we sure hope he gets back and gets back to playing the way he can play.
Especially a player of that size, too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
A couple of other notes. Igor Chernyshov, forward for the San Jose Sharks, left 20 seconds into San Jose's win in Montreal after taking a hit from Mike Matheson and went down, tried to get up, fell backwards. He was taken to the hospital but was released and traveled with the team to Ottawa, where he did not play in Sunday's loss to the Senators. More from the Sharks. goaltender Yaroslav Askarov, lower body injury prior to the morning skate last Thursday in Boston. Laurent Brossoit was called up to back up Alex Nedeljkovic, and he started his first game on Sunday since April 18th, 2024. He had missed all of last season with knee and hip ailments, only stopped 18 out of 23 shots in the Sharks' loss in Ottawa. But the Anaheim Ducks, Troy Terry came back for his first game since February 25th, had a goal and 2 assists in the win in Montreal. Let's talk a couple of milestones here. Actually, we're going to talk a few milestones here. Anze Kopitar, captain of the LA Kings, scored 2 goals on Saturday in the Kings' loss at New Jersey, but in doing so, set the Kings' record with 1,308 points, surpassing the legend Marcel Dion.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, Anze Kopitar has been a great player for the LA Kings ever since he got there. And, of course, played on their 2 Stanley Cup teams. And I know he'll have his number 11 put up in the building alongside of Gretzky and Robitaille and Taylor and Vachon when he retires.
Make room at Crypto.com Arena. But you know what else I love about this, Neil, is that Kopitar announced at the start of the season that he was going to retire after 20 years. Doesn't like the fanfare, but every team after every game is now staying out to shake his hand. And I just love what this has become in the NHL when legends are making their final pass through NHL arenas, that they are being acknowledged by the opposition. The Islanders did it in a losing cause on Friday. As tough as that may have been, they stayed out and were as gracious as could be, as were the Devils on Saturday.
It's really good. It shows respect for those players. It's something that's really wonderful to see, and it shows the hockey world what the hockey world is really like. I mean, it's a very small universe in hockey. Everybody knows everybody. And the best part of the thing, the honor in UBS Arena when Anze Kopitar stayed on the ice to shake hands with all of the New York Islanders, was when he got to the 18-year-old Matthew Schaefer, who's just a phenom for the Islanders this year, first overall in the 25 draft. One guy is leaving after a 20-year career, and one guy is probably just starting a 20-year career. So that was really special.
Next up, Monday night at Madison Square Garden for Kopitar. Jared Spurgeon, captain of the Minnesota Wild, played his 1,000th NHL game, all with the Wild, in Saturday's loss against the Rangers. He began his career in 2010-2011. Kyle Connor, his 830-goal season, that sets a new Jets record, passing Ilya Kovalchuk, and he achieved that in the Jets win over Colorado on Saturday. And Wes McCauley officiated his 1,500th NHL game in the Golden Knights win on Saturday against the Chicago Blackhawks. And Neil, both of us also remember Wes's father, John, extremely well from his days as an NHL referee.
And I knew John well. I mean, John would come to the American Hockey League Board of Governors meetings, and my mom knew him, and we used to have a lot of fun there in Hilton Head, South Carolina.
I know how much you have enjoyed all of the pomp and circumstance surrounding the double gold medals for the U.S. men's and women's hockey team. And now we can add a third to that, because on Sunday, the men's Paralympic team beat Canada, again. They win their 5th straight Olympic gold. Jack Wallace with a hat trick. The United States becomes the first nation to sweep hockey gold at the Olympics in men's, women's, and Paralympics. It's quite an achievement.
It really is. That's great for hockey. Great to keep hockey out there in the news. Great to keep hockey at top of mind. And congratulations to the U.S. for that accomplishment.
A little bit more international news, because on Monday at the GM meetings at Palm Beach, Florida, it is expected to be announced that the next World Cup of Hockey will take place in February of 2028. But before we get so excited about this, and the hockey will be great, as it was last year, as it was at the Olympics, you're going to have a compressed schedule again, and this time with 84 games on the NHL schedule for each team.
Yeah, and then you're going to have more compressed body parts as well and more injuries during that compressed schedule. So we leave it to the greater minds than ours.
I don't believe that for 1 second, but be careful for what you wish for, because it's going to be great hockey, but as we have seen, it will come at a price. But obviously, people will not worry about that until we get there. But what is present is today's schedule and tomorrow's. On Monday, Calgary at Detroit, crucial game for the Red Wings. Boston at New Jersey, crucial game for the Bruins. LA at the Rangers. The bread will be delivered at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, that's going to be quite a reaction from the Garden faithful for Panarin, because as you know, Panarin didn't want to leave. He didn't ask to leave. They sort of made him leave, and they took him out of the lineup before anybody knew it. He just wasn't ever going to play again. And he was loved in the Garden. He was a great Ranger. You couldn't get any more out of him than the Rangers got out of him for 6 seasons. So I expect that he will get a raucous applause from the Madison Square Garden.
Dallas Stars, we already know, will be getting a raucous reception when they take their 15-game unbeaten streak into their game against Utah at the American Airlines Center. Pittsburgh is at Colorado on Tuesday. Islanders at Toronto. Boston at Montreal. This is one I am really looking forward to watching. Also, Carolina at Columbus, Minnesota at Chicago, Nashville at Winnipeg, San Jose at Edmonton. Good one there. Also, Florida at Vancouver, Buffalo at Vegas should be a good one. Tampa Bay at Seattle should be a good one. So no shortage of good selection at the smorgasbord.
No, it's going to be a good Monday and Tuesday night. Get yourself ready, order your pizza, get your bowl of chips, and maybe a couple of nice beverages, and enjoy the hockey.
I think you really wanted to put that last part first.
Yeah, forget the food.
You can reach us individually at Neil at NHLWraparound.com or Vic at NHLWraparound.com. All of our shows are on all platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube. Please leave a review or subscribe if you are tuning in on YouTube. We are now over 800 subscribers. You can also find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Radi8.tv. Our website is NHLWraparound.com. Patrick Hoffman has been writing New York-centric for us all year long, so check out his latest. And also sPix, which are available on audio. I give you the last word on picks, sir.
3-3 yesterday for sPix. Enjoying doing it on audio. It's really a lot of fun, and hopefully the folks out there enjoying seeing how good or bad Smith can be.
Either way, people are tuning in. And speaking of which, we hope you will join us again on Wednesday with NHL Wraparound. Take care.